Right, hi everyone, it's Dave here. Hopefully this is recording. I'm just looking off to my screen where I'm actually recording this on the other side. Thanks for checking out this video. This is sort of a recreation of a talk that I gave on Thursday night at MKGN37 Night here in Milton Keynes where I live. I'm redoing it, and actually the Thursday night was the first ever talk that I had ever given, so thanks to everyone who actually paid attention for the whole 5 minutes that the talk went on for. Thanks to Bradley and the MKGN37 people for inviting me down. I had a really good time, and also to the other speakers as well. I'm a bit of a fan of Mr. Bingo since then as well, so it was a good night, and I'm going to be back at the next one in September. I think it's September the 23rd if I remember rightly, so definitely go and check out mkgeeknight.co.uk. And I will be there, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again. And like I said, this is a recreation of the talk. I've called it the expanded version because I'm going to talk a little bit longer than the 5 or 6 minutes that I had on Thursday about this topic. But what I'm going to be talking about is how people like myself have made music over the last 30 years using electronics and computers. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. If I keep glancing off to my right, by the way, or my left or your right, whatever, it's because I'm recording this on another screen. I just want to make sure that everything's working all right, but hopefully you're able to hear this okay. So yeah, so definitely check out MKGN37, especially if you're local. It's great. So on to the speech and the talk. This was about how we made it in the electronic music industry. And once I go over and I click start, you'll be able to check it out. By the way, check out my Twitter, SoundCloud, Facebook, all the usual shenanigans. If you've got any questions, either drop them in the comments on this video or just drop me an email. It's dave@daveskywalker.com, and it'll be really cool to chat to you and see what your thoughts are. So if this all plays, and hopefully it is, then we are good to go. So let's kick off, shall we? So yeah, this is a talk about how we made it over the last 8 years in the electronic music industry. It's one of the few DIY scenes that are left, I guess, in terms of music. The metal scene is pretty DIY, but the electronic music scene is certainly very DIY. So a little bit about me. By day, my name is Dave. I'm a services director of a software company based at the Silverstone Innovation Centre. But by night, I'm a DJ, music producer, label owner. I help curate a music festival, and I'm a resident DJ at a night called Bangface, which has been in national press. This is me a few years ago playing to 10,000 people in Belgium. Yep, that's me there. And I played in Detroit and Toronto and all over the place, basically, over the last 20-something years. But how did people like me start getting into electronic music and start making it and getting places with it? So a lot of people like myself started off in the 80s. I'll show my age now. But we started off by writing music, by programming the sound chips on our home computers that we had. I had a Commodore 64 and a Commodore Plus 4. But if you were lucky, you might have an Atari. If you were really lucky, you might have an Amiga. But most people had home computers like this. You'd spend all day coding and trying to use peek and poke statements to actually program a sound chip. If you were lucky, you'd end up with something like this. It was never going to be a number one, but we were getting started. But something happened at the turn of the 90s in terms of electronic music. There was an explosion in both rave culture that was driven by not only political reasons and other things that was going on around the time, but it was the first real chance that people could make their own music and actually get it out without having to be a slave to record labels, like big, corporate record labels or anything like that. For the first time, people at home, because the increase in the ability of computers at home, people could actually start coding their own music and essentially script music. This was a free program called Impulse Tracker, which was around at the time, and many people like myself started actually writing music using Impulse Tracker. There's a guy called Deadmau5 who's quite popular now. He started off writing happy hardcore on Impulse Tracker and is now worth about $15 million. So for the first time you could make music, you could put it on a CD, you could then get it put onto a dub plate, which is like an acetate record, give it to a DJ and get it start playing out. If it got traction, you could pay a record pressing plant about £1,000. They would actually press up your record, and then you'd spend the weekends driving around your record shops around London or the big cities, putting your record into the shops. And if it was lucky, you'd get played out quite a lot. If you were really lucky, it might end up somewhere like Radio 1, or someone like Pete Tong or one of the radio DJs there would really give it exposure, and you'd start getting your sort of feedback and getting a name for yourself that way. And that was the main way things got bigger and bigger in the 90s. But moving into the year 2000s, there was kind of a distribution revolution. And for the first time, you could now play CDs in nightclubs. Pioneer came out with a swanky new range of CD decks called CDJs. And you could take your music and put it on a CD, give it directly to a DJ, and it could get played in the club. You didn't have to get a dub plate pressed up anymore or a record pressed up anymore. And record shops really took a battering around that time. They started losing loads of money, and a lot of them closed. But you could actually get your music straight into the clubs from your CD, from your computer, and music software was getting better and better. But the way of getting your tracks out there and known was changing as well. A lot of people now had the internet at home. They were using bulletin boards to start talking about music. Depending on what the music scene that you're in, there's normally a bulletin board for it. And some people were actually sending out their music over peer-to-peer file sharing networks. A lot of people were using things like Napster or Kazaa. These were notorious for distributing copyright music, but a lot of independent artists were actually using that to send their tracks out because they were still too big to send over emails. You would normally email someone with maybe a link or something, but file sizes were still quite big. So if you wanted to get your track out there digitally, because MP3s were coming out and becoming more popular, you were using peer-to-peer file sharing networks for that. There's still a few of them around nowadays, but nowhere on the scale that they were in the early 2000s. And that kind of leads us to where things are nowadays. Because everything was able to be sent digitally, and because of the increase in the advent of the internet, there became like a saturation of the market. There was just music everywhere. And eventually, over time, over the last sort of 10 years or so, streaming services have become more and more popular. So if you want to make it in the music industry now, an electronic music industry, I should say, what do you need to do? Well, first, you need to be good at social media. You need to have your Twitter and your Instagram, your SoundCloud and your YouTube and TikTok more recently. You're probably using If This Then That to actually kind of post all these places at once. Obviously, everyone now has to have a cool logo of their artist name, probably in a font that you downloaded from thefont.com or somewhere like that. But you also need to have a distributor for your digital music. If you want to be on Spotify or Beatport or one of the main electronic music sites, you need to get your track onto there. And there's a lot of distributor sites that will do that for you, things like DistroKid or TuneCore or Ditto. But they'll take a percentage of the measly 0.3 pence per play that Spotify are going to give you. So there's not much money in that. So a lot of artists, and if you like electronic music or even independent music, please go and check out Bandcamp and check out the actual labels and artists that are on there, because they will give a much bigger percentage of a track back to an artist. If you buy a track off there for £1, let's say, and the artist get back to 90 pence, they're still increasing their income by about 3,000 times over what they get from Spotify. So please check out Bandcamp. You can also check out Bandcamp if you want merchandise. So if you're a DJ or a producer, at some point somebody will say, oh, have you got a t-shirt that I can have or something like that, or some stickers or something. So you'll be able to sell stuff through Bandcamp or build your own website using something like Wix. And if your track gets played on radio, you need to be registered with the Performing Rights Society. You need to be on PRS and PPL to make sure you get some money back from royalties. Which leads us to the question, to kind of manage all of that, do you need an agent? Now, my personal opinion is no. I know a lot of promoters and festival owners don't really like agents because they push the price of everything up. They make it much more harder on a budgetary level to keep an event going. And a lot of things you can do yourself, but you've got to be able to get, email and contact people and put your name out there. So an agent can help, but they'll also be a hindrance to you in some cases. But one thing I haven't talked about is the actual music production side. Music software is still getting better and better. You need to keep on top of the scenes, have the latest kind of vibe to your music to stay current, and you need to sort of be on top with all of that. If you don't want to, you could just go on Fiverr.com and get someone to make a track for you and have a ghostwriter. Some people do that, but, I'll leave that decision to you. But the one thing that hasn't really changed is being able to network and actually meet other people. You need to be able to meet people, go to clubs, go to festivals, go to events and meet promoters and owners and talk to other label owners and talk to other artists and DJs, because in a lot of the scene, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You can be very good, but if you're not going out there and meeting anyone and talking to anyone, you're going to get lost in the crowd. But if you can do all of that and you can keep on top of that, that's how you can make it in the electronic music industry. And that was the end of my talk. It was, like I said, it was only 5 minutes long, and hopefully you've got a few sort of nuggets of information out there. By all means, email me, dave@daveskywalker.com, and I'm happy to talk about anything. And please leave comments, because I'm more than happy to do that. And I will speak to you guys later. All right, take care. Ta-da.